So this is more on Super Tuesday. Um, as I said, with respect to Super Tuesday, and what I want to focus on this channel is all the little things that you may have missed. There's a lot of stuff bubbling up in the surface, particularly on a state level, that is fascinating. Wars within the Republican Party, and let me also make it clear that what is going on in the Republican Party and what's going on the left, there is an ideological struggle on both sides, but what's happening on the right is nowhere near what's happening on the left. Why? Because on the right, you're getting actual threats. You're getting people who are talking about, going rhino hunting, quote unquote, with a shotgun, right? There are threat. People are scared for their lives if they don't vote a certain way, if they don't act a certain way. You have also on the right, and in this particular story in Texas between Paxton and Abbott, stories about people about politicians who are going after the political futures of their enemies. You have people, and this is a conservative state. Let's be clear. These are conservative Republicans going after conservative Republicans. On the left, you have people who are more, um, you know. Uh, what do they call them? Blue dog kind of Democrats versus progressive versus liberals and versus business oriented versus. I mean, it's much more of a diverse sort of grouping of people. It's not one progressive group going out like I remember back in the day. It was Elizabeth Warren's group versus Bernie Sanders' group. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is a purge and an attack going after people who are reliably conservative, have been reliably conservative all their lives, and they found corruption in this guy Paxton. They tried to impeach him, lost, and now Paxton and Abbott are going after them politically. And, they're making threats that would seem to indicate that they want to go after them physically. But anyway, this is all about Super Tuesday, but I just wanted to sort of set the table as to why this is such an important story. And the title of this is again, I think, from the Washington Post: the Texas GOP purge and other below the radar Super Tuesday nuggets. And it begins with, and this is Washington Post, Aaron Blake, March 8th, 2024, again last week. And number one on this list is a landmark GOP purge in Texas, and this is via the Texas Tribune. Of 10 state House GOP incumbents, Abbott targeted, only two won renomination on Tuesday. Five lost, and three others were pushed into runoffs. Paxton was less successful in the state legislature. Of the 35 House GOP incumbents he targeted, most won, but seven lost and eight others were pushed into runoffs, including, most notably, State House Speaker Dale Phelan, who led the failed impeachment charge. There is some overlap between the lists. For instance, four incumbents who lost were targeted by both. Paxton also successfully targeted all three Republican judges on the State Court of Criminal Appeals who were up for re-election, two of whom lost by landslide margins. The trio had voted 8-1 majority to strip him of power to prosecute voter fraud without the approval of local prosecutors. So let me be clear. So this is again an attempt by Abbott and by Paxton to settle personal grudges, to settle personal slights to their political agenda, right? This is authoritarianism, basically. You didn't agree with my positions on certain things because you have your positions that are different from my own. I'm going to target you and I'm going to go after you. Now, we're in a democracy. That's totally understandable. Listen, that's what happens. But this targeting of judges I thought was absolutely fascinating because of how successful he was. Some of these judges had been on the bench for 30 years. I mean, these are people who I think in cases they were put on all by conservatives. But you can't tell me that these guys were not some of the most right wing judges you'll ever find. And because he refused to because they refused to endorse this idea that he could prosecute voter fraud instead of local prosecutors, he targeted them and won quite a bit, and is now going to be able to appoint new judges that will support his vision. This is the essence of authoritarianism. This he wants to be able to control both the courts as well as local prosecutors as well as the people. He wants to be able to have the right to prosecute people on his own, Governor Abbott, without prosecutors getting involved. So, and this is stripping, by the way, local cities and municipalities of their ability to run their own communities. And remember, there is a conservative axiom that believes that the government closest to the people should have say, should have more sway. Right? This is their view when it is the federal government comes in and decides to, for instance, integrate schools or force busing. Right? This whole idea that, oh, the people, the government closest to the people should have control over the laws, right? Local sheriffs, constitutional sheriffs. That's the whole idea that the power really is invested in the sheriffs, not on the federal government. Well, this puts lie to that, because in Texas, the state government, that means the governors, are overruling the mayors and the city councils, right? If you believe that the government closest to the people should rule them, then it should be the mayors, it should be the city councils, it should be the people closest, the government closest to the people. But nope, not in Texas, not in Florida, not in a number of places. They're slowly stripping away power from those local governments, because those local governments are ruling and making laws and making decisions based on what they see on the ground. So if you have a blue area, a place that is mostly full of Democrats, like say a Houston, I think, or others, they're going to strip that government of its power so that the government out of the state government can come in and it can impose its will on the people. So this is a part of the fraud that has been going around in the Republican Party for a long time. They don't believe in what they say they believe in, and we've seen that now with the whole abortion issue. That, oh, it's just about abortions. We're not going to go any further than that. Yeah, you watch. Number two, this is the other very fascinating thing, and I mentioned this last week. I mentioned it on Monday's show. I mentioned it on a special show I did on Thursday. This is regarding propositions E and F in San Francisco. This was a local proposition to handle the problems going on in San Francisco, and it says, and by the way, props E and F were funded mostly by tech executives, by wealthy folks, and also championed by the Democratic mayor of San Francisco. A lot of people are saying that it's because she's up for reelection. She's going to have a tough reelection. I don't know that much about the politics in San Francisco. However, it's a bastion, supposed bastion of liberalism. They are fed up with what has been going on there. And the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, she has come out in support of ENF. And ENF, which we will see. Actually, I think it says it in this. So let me read this from the Washington Post, and then I'll come back. Voters strongly supported rather conservative policies of requiring drug screening for welfare recipients, 63 to 37%, and giving police more surveillance and pursuit powers and less oversight, 60 to 40. They also voted to waive a tax for developers who convert office buildings into housing, 68 to 32. On these proposals, Mayor London Breed failed to earn support from Liberal Board of Supervisors before pursuing the ballot measures. And a slate of more moderate candidates appeared set to take over the local Democratic County Central Committee just 4 years after Liberals won all but 2 seats there. So part of what's happening here, and as I'm reading this, apparently Breed tried to get the city council to do this. They refused, so they put it in a proposition, and it appears to be winning. And again, there's a lot of tech, a lot of right wing money that was poured into this, but you will not, unless we see more data, which we haven't seen it. But I'm not convinced that going ahead and going after welfare recipients is going to solve the problem of crime and of drugs. I mean, are we saying that welfare recipients are the ones who are doing most of the drugs or all of the drugs in San Francisco? I mean, you're going to see a reduction because I'm sure some welfare recipients are doing it. But is it where the problem is? Is it where the concentration of the problem is? This is a right-wing framing of how you deal with problems. right? Start arresting poor people and minorities, and you'll see a difference. You're not going to solve the problem at all. If we had the war on drugs back in the 80s during Ronald Reagan, we would have no drug problem anymore, right? So we know this is not a solution. In fact, what you end up having is uh, um, prisons that are loaded up with people that you can no longer afford to house people. There's so many people in jail, right? So now you're in a situation where you're having to figure out how are we gonna deal with all these people. We got to take them out of these prisons and put them back in the street after being in prison for 20 years or so, right? The war on drugs was a failure by criminalizing drugs, but here we are in San Francisco going back to that idea that you can criminalize or prosecute people, and that's going to somehow solve the problem that is happening in San Francisco. I'm not saying that there isn't a huge problem in San Francisco. There is a huge problem on multiple levels. I just believe that the solution, these right wing solutions, are not the answer. They are an answer, but they're not the answer. And I hope that there is more coming than just this. But I understand the desperation to do something. I just question, and I do believe that San Francisco went too far left. I mean, and I do believe that the governor and the prosecutors were flat-footed on the rise in crime, businesses leaving, and all that kind of stuff. I get that, but you want to respond in a way that is going to actually solve the problem and not make things worse or not push the problem down the line, which is exactly what I think this is going to do. That's exactly what politicians do. They decide to go after the poorest, go after minorities, and you'll see a reduction of these crimes because you're going to arrest some people. But the problem is going to still remain, and it's like let my predecessor 10 years from now deal with that problem. So not totally surprising, disappointing, not surprising, but we'll see where this goes. um, Finally, this is another interesting thing, which is a good sign for progressives. And it says progressives fared well in DA races. In Travis County, Texas, District Attorney Jose Garza won his primary 67-33, turning aside a concerted and well funded effort to unseat him that favored apocalyptic and overwrought claims about crime. Elon Musk even encouraged Tesla employees to vote Garza out. The more progressive candidate also won in a landslide in Harris County, where challenger Sean Ture defeated incumbent District Attorney Kim Ogg by 75-25 margin. Ogg has clashed with local Democratic officials about their more liberal policies. The results were less encouraging for embattled progressive Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gaston. He is currently taking about 23% as of Friday in a very crowded field, which is far from a resounding performance, but he could well survive as he appears headed to a runoff with a former Republican, Nathan Hochman. And thus far, the effort to defeat progressives in district attorney race by linking their approaches to crime and George Soros, whose name featured in each of these contests, hasn't exactly borne a lot of fruit. So what's actually fascinating here, and this is similar to what happened in the election where the red wave failed, was that in 2025 or no, I'm sorry, in 2023. Part of the failed red wave that was supposed to happen, either 22 or 23, I can't remember right now, I'm blanking on that. But part of what was interesting is that these areas that are red states, the red wave failed there, but because Democrats were able to grow their margins and were able to hold on. So Republicans were not able to grow in those areas, in those red states. However, in the blue states, Republicans were able to make gains. And this seems to me a similar situation that's happening here. Here it is in Los Angeles. The DA is struggling, but in Texas, Democrats are thriving and are able to beat back attempts to push them out of office or to change the progressive movement, the progressive narrative. This is why you can see Greg Abbott removed a whole bunch of judges on the state Supreme Court. They are looking to solidify their power for generations. So, and they have very much successfully done that. Speaking of LA and of California, I want to go to this very interesting situation with Proposition 1. Now, Proposition 1, and I'm actually going to read directly from this to say what Proposition 1 is. And it was, this is another, California is one of these interesting states where it takes forever for them to count the votes because it's so populous. But it says, this was a proposition that was up on Super Tuesday. It has still not been called because it's so tight. But it says Proposition 1 would amend the Mental Health Services Act, which was adopted with the approval of Proposition 63 in 2004. Proposition 63 enacted an additional 1% tax on income above 1 million and dedicated the revenue to counties to fund mental health services and programs. Proposition 1 would rename the MHSA to the Behavioral Health Services Act. Proposition 1 would also expand the act to include treatment for substance use disorder. It could change how county mental health plans are required to spend revenue from the 1% tax increase the number of members on the Oversight Commission of the Act. And increase the number of members on the Oversight Commission Act. So this is barely holding on 50% to 49.73%. This is very surprising, and I think that this is an act that was pushed by the Governor Gavin Newsom. He believes strongly in this act, and it is not being overwhelmingly embraced by Californians. They're actually pushing back. I don't know a whole lot of the people who were a part of the pushback against this. I'm gonna just read this very briefly. This is from Ballotpedia, by the way, which is a great place to look at for more information on propositions, on laws, on people running, etc. But it says, yes on Prop 1 is leading the campaign in support of Proposition 1. It looks like it is endorsed by Blue Shield of California, California Professional Firefighters, California Business Roundtable, California Chamber of Commerce, etc. Gavin Newsom also supports it. Californians against Prop 1 led the campaign in in opposition to Proposition 1. The campaign endorsements include Cal Voices, Disabled Rights California, which is probably a group that just came out of nowhere, Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, League of Women Voters of California, that's surprising, Mental Health America of California. And at the time, this is what the Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California and the leader in the No on Prop 1 campaign, says, quote, at a time when we face growing mental health crisis with homelessness, Prop 1 actually diverts existing funds from mental health treatment programs so that the money can be diverted to government-funded housing projects. In doing so, Prop 1 raids and diverts funds from the very mental health treatment programs that currently serve homeless people. That's why a bipartisan coalition of mental health treatment advocates oppose Prop 1 and warn of devastating cuts to mental health treatment if the program passes. So that is what is going on here. I think that this looks like, or I had thought it looked like one of the biggest attempts to sort of bring back to some extent, I don't want to say institutions, but a much more of a concerted effort on the medical side to deal with people who are mentally ill. A lot of your homeless are people who are mentally ill. Or significant number, there are a significant number of people in prisons that are mentally ill. They shouldn't be in prison. They should be treated for mental illness. A lot of people who end up on drugs become mentally ill. They become schizophrenic. That is a real thing that happens with the drugs. So this is fascinating. It's an example of the political power of Gavin Newsom. Whether he's going to have the political power to keep this pushing through, it's a nail biter as of right now, and there's no telling what is going to happen going forward. This is another story. This is it's interesting. It's sort of in the same vein as that last story because this is a situation, and this is from Cal Matters, March 11th. This is today by Marisa Kendall, and the title is Sacramento gave a homeless camp a lease as an experiment, and here's what happened. And it goes on to talk about the overall story here. And again, homeless problem in California is significant. And it says when Sacramento changed its plan to demolish a homeless encampment on a vacant lot in Colfax Street, instead of offering the homeless occupants a lease, activists and camp residents celebrated it as a win. I'm sorry, I should say. Um, Instead of offering the homeless occupants a lease, activists and camp residents celebrated it as a win. Instead of demolishing it, in other words, they offered them a lease. The first of its kind deal, which allows the camp to remain in place and govern itself without city interference, was held up as a model Sacramento could replicate as future sites. Other cities, including San Jose, have said they're considering similar models, putting the success or failure of the encampment under the microscope. A year later, Sacramento has not managed to reproduce the concept and has no plans to. Residents of the camp who lack electricity or running water complain they feel forgotten. And the county district attorney, claiming the site threatens public safety, has demanded the city clear the camp or risk prosecution. Those troubles highlighted the logistical and ethical dilemmas that come with setting aside outdoor spaces for homeless residents who go when there aren't enough beds indoors. And it comes at a time when officials across the state increasingly are turning to last ditch solutions as they face mounting pressure to clear encampments away from the sidewalks, parks, schools, and other high traffic public areas. So, this is just an example of how difficult this process is to deal with the homeless problem in California, and all throughout America. California is not the only place that has it; they have it everywhere, Texas, Florida, etc. But the challenge here, it seems to me, is that when you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And even when you do something that is positive, it has a backlash, and it unfortunately has an outcome that may not be what you had hoped it would be. And I just think that these are the kinds of things that you have to be careful with, things that you have to watch out for, even when you have the best of intentions going forward on dealing with the issue of homelessness. This is why this Proposition 1 is so interesting to me. I think it's worth following, and how each state deals with its own problem with the homeless situation or the unhoused situation is going to be interesting, because I can't wait to find out who is going to really figure this thing out and truly solve the problem of the or taking some big inroads on dealing with the issue of the unhoused population in America. Finally, to the bullet point, it looks like number two is winning, so we're gonna go with that. And that is a story out of the Wall Street Journal, and I think it's making big news today because of all of the implications here with the Buckingham Palace and others. And I just want to let me see if I can. I'm going to bring this up very quickly because I want to see if I can get to see this without having to run into some problems here, which I think I am going to run into problems, but let's try this anyway. Um, so what happened is Princess Kate, the future Queen of England, the wife of the future King William, um, she recently had surgery, and just sort of to set the whole situation here, the king is currently diagnosed with cancer, and he's being treated, and he is has been very open and very forthcoming about this situation. At the same time, coincidentally, the princess Catherine, Princess of Wales, went into the hospital almost. I don't think it could be under the radar, but it's definitely something that people were not. They were, while they were focused on King Charles, no one was. They would hope no one was looking at Catherine, but of course they were. And she went into the hospital, had a abdominal surgery, and came back out. And the monarchy has been somewhat mum on what her full issue was and why she was put in the hospital, while she went in the hospital. But great that she's out and she's doing better. And the I don't know if it's Buckingham Palace or who. Actually, I'll read the story and I'll find out. But they decided to the family the decided to release a photo of Kate. And of course, the sleuths, the online sleuths, decided to zoom in on the picture. And what do you know? They found out it had been altered. So, this is again from today's Wall Street Journal. And it says, it was the photo that was supposed to reassure the world that all was well with Catherine, Princess of Wales. Instead, an altered image released by Kensington Palace of Kate Middleton, where the princess seen hugging her three children, has provoked a barrage of conspiracy theories and questions about how transparent the royal family is about the princess's health. Catherine underwent abdominal surgery in January and, excluding a grainy paparazzi shot of her sitting in a car, hasn't been seen in public since. On Sunday, the palace released a photo of the 42-year-old that it said had been taken by her husband, Prince William, to commemorate Mother's Day in the UK. It said, "Thank you for your kind wishes and the continued support over the last 2 months. The palace has had repeatedly said that Catherine was doing well and would resume royal functions after Easter." Catherine on Monday admitted to altering the photo, saying in a statement, quote, "Like many amateur photographers, I occasionally experiment with editing." She apologized for any confusion and photographs might have caused. Within hours of the Mother's Day message appearing, on an online community of royal watchers was flagging oddities with the image. Catherine didn't appear to be wearing a wedding ring. The sleeve on the red sweater worn by her daughter, Princess Charlotte, appeared to have been cropped. The floor behind Catherine appeared to have a kink in it. Late Sunday, four major news agencies pulled the photo, saying the source might have manipulated the image. Officials at Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace both didn't respond to requests for comment. The royal family has long digitally altered images handed out to the press, but this alteration of an image that was always likely to be closely scrutinized for clues about Catherine's health has generated a firestorm and further fueled a paranoia in Britain and beyond about the health of members of the Windsor franchise. The furor comes amid widespread attention on health issues in the royal family, with King Charles himself battling unspecified cancer. The monarch, who took over after the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, isn't currently undertaking royal duties. During his treatment, the palace said he's doing well, but hasn't disclosed the diagnosis. The photo dominated UK media headlines on Monday and further stoked concerns that Catherine is also ill. In January, she spent 13 nights at the London Clinic near Regent Park in central London following abdominal surgery that the palace said wasn't cancer related. Officials haven't disclosed what illness Catherine is recovering from or exactly when she will be back undertaking royal duties. Aides have only said that they would provide updates if there was any significant news. The late Queen Elizabeth once said that the royal family needed to be seen to be believed, but right now the family is faced with more intractable problems. The British public doesn't believe what it's seeing. The image also drew its share of jokes online, with social media users crudely photoshopping the image further, replacing Catherine with the likes of U.S. Bernie Sanders, Ozzy Osbourne, and clips from the movie Weekend at Bernie's. Wow, that was pretty cruel. And, you would think that going after Joe Biden with Weekends at Bernie's type of stuff, that the that was cruel. But I mean, the British somehow know how to outdo us here in the U.S. Okay, so this was another long show, longer show than I thought it would be. But thank you for tuning in, and thank you for tuning in to the very end, which is important. Again, this show streams live both on YouTube and on mastodon.vtip.me. I should say Mastodon.vtip. I should say stream.vtip.me. You can see this streaming live as well as on our um, YouTube channel at What You Missed TV. Uh, if you want to reach out to the show, reach out to me. If you have some stories you would like me to take a look at, go to mastodon.vtip.me at What You Missed, and who knows, we may discuss it here on the show. Thank you for watching today's show, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, great rest of your day, and I'll see you next Monday live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.